It was a normal Friday evening when everything changed. I had no way of knowing, of course, that the smallest of moments would spiral into something I couldn't undo. But there I was, sitting on the edge of my bed, staring at my phone screen like it was a lifeline to something I couldn't grasp. It all began with a simple text. Just a few words that turned my whole life upside down. Are you coming tonight? I didn't even need to ask what tonight was. The moment I saw the message, I knew exactly what was about to unfold. Clara, my wife of 6 years, had been distant for weeks. It started small, almost like a quiet murmur in the background of our daily lives. A few offhand comments, a subtle coldness in her voice, moments of silence where there should have been conversation. But that night, it felt different. Something was off in a way that I couldn't explain. Are you coming tonight? The message was from a number I didn't recognize. For a brief moment, I thought maybe it was a mistake, maybe someone had sent it to the wrong person. But there was a small part of me, deep down, that knew better. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a coincidence. And this wasn't the first time something like this had happened. The last few weeks had been a slow burn, each day revealing more cracks in our once perfect marriage. Clara had become more distant. At first, I thought it was just work stress, or maybe I was overreacting. But when you've been married as long as we had, you start to notice things. Small things. The way she'd leave for errands and take longer than usual. The way her phone would be face down when we sat at dinner. The way she'd look away when I caught her glancing at her phone with that strange, guilty expression. I should have noticed earlier. But I didn't. I took a deep breath and replied, my fingers shaking as I typed. Who is this? It wasn't long before the reply came through, and when I saw it, my heart stopped. It's me, Jason. You know, from the bar last week. Clara's friend. I stared at the screen for what felt like hours. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of what was happening. Jason, the guy from the bar? The guy Clara had met when I was working late? My hands trembled, and I could feel the anger starting to bubble up, a knot forming in my stomach. My breath quickened. I knew Jason. I'd met him a few times. He was just another one of Clara's friends, a guy she occasionally went out with for drinks after work. I never thought much of him. But now, seeing his name flash across my phone screen, something in me snapped. I wasn't a jealous guy. At least, I didn't think I was. But this was something different. This felt like a breach of something far worse than a harmless friendship. I took a moment to compose myself. I needed to think clearly. The last thing I wanted to do was jump to conclusions without knowing the full picture. But the more I thought about it, the more certain I became that this wasn't innocent. Not at all. I texted back. Clara is my wife. Why are you texting me? What is going on? The response was almost immediate. She's been talking about you a lot, Vincent. I think she's confused, and I'm not sure she's in the right place mentally. Maybe you should talk to her. You deserve to know the truth. My fingers froze on the screen. I had been expecting a fight, maybe some kind of denial. But this was different. The truth? What truth? I felt my entire world tilt. There was no way I was going to ignore this now. I had to confront her. I had to know what was really going on. So I waited. I didn't reply right away. I needed a plan. I couldn't just storm in there, demanding answers without understanding what was happening. I knew Clara. I knew how she could turn the situation around, make it seem like it was all in my head. She was good at that, better than anyone. But this time, I wasn't going to let her charm her way out of it. I waited for the text from her. It never came. Instead, I decided I'd do something I never thought I would. Show up at the place she'd been going. The bar. It wasn't like me to sneak around, to act out of suspicion. But something inside me told me I had to. I couldn't ignore the feeling gnawing at the pit of my stomach. I wasn't going to let her walk away with whatever secret she was keeping. Not this time. I didn't waste any time. The moment I made up my mind, I grabbed my jacket, stepped into my car, and drove to the bar. I knew Clara went there often, but it wasn't the kind of place I usually frequented. I wasn't sure what I was expecting, but something told me that this wasn't just about her having a drink with friends. As I pulled into the parking lot, my heart started racing. The neon sign flickered above me, casting a cold, artificial glow over the entrance. It felt like the beginning of some dark thriller. I had no idea what I was about to uncover, but I knew deep down that this wasn't going to be good. I stepped out of the car and hesitated for a moment. The sound of laughter and music spilled out from the bar's open door, but inside, I felt like I was walking into the unknown. Was I ready to face whatever I might find? It didn't matter. I couldn't go back now. The moment I entered, the noise hit me like a wave. The bar was packed, people laughing, talking, and enjoying the night, completely oblivious to what was going on beneath the surface. I scanned the room, looking for Clara, my eyes darting between the tables and the bar. But then something caught my attention. There they were, Clara and Jason, sitting at a corner booth, laughing. I couldn't hear their conversation, but from the way they were leaning in towards each other, it was clear they were more than just friends. I stood there, frozen in the doorway. My blood felt like ice in my veins. Jason's hand was casually placed on Clara's arm, his fingers gently brushing her skin as she smiled up at him. That smile, the one she always gave me when she wanted something. The one that made me feel like I was the only person in the world. But there, in that moment, it was different. The way she was looking at him wasn't how she looked at me. It was warmer, more intimate. It made me feel like an outsider in my own life. I wanted to walk over there, to confront them, to shout, to demand answers. But something held me back. I wasn't sure what I'd do if I actually confronted them. What if I was wrong? What if it was all in my head? What if Clara could turn this around and make it seem like I was the one who was overreacting? But deep down, I knew. I couldn't ignore it. This wasn't just a casual friendship. This was something else. Something that had been happening right under my nose, and I had been too blind to see it. I watched them for what felt like hours, but in reality, it was probably only a few minutes. Eventually, Clara stood up to go to the bathroom, and Jason was left alone at the booth, sipping his drink. My instincts screamed at me to walk over to him, to say something, anything, but I didn't. Instead, I quietly slipped into the seat where Clara had been sitting. I wasn't sure why I did it. Maybe I was hoping I'd learn something. Maybe I was just trying to feel close to her again. But as I sat there, staring at the spot where she'd been, everything felt different. The whole place, the whole situation, felt suffocating. It was like the walls were closing in on me. I waited for a while, trying to calm the storm of thoughts that were flooding my mind. The sounds of the bar seemed distant now. My world had shrunk to that one table, that one moment. Clara's absence only made the feeling more intense. Then, just as I was about to leave, Clara returned from the bathroom. She didn't see me at first, but when she did, her eyes widened. She froze for a second, like she had seen a ghost, then quickly plastered a smile on her face. "Vincent," she said, too loudly, too cheerfully. "What are you doing here?" I looked at her for a moment. Her voice, her smile, everything about her seemed rehearsed, like she was trying to convince me that nothing was wrong. But I wasn't buying it anymore. "I was just having a drink," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "You didn't mention this place when you told me where you were going. Thought I'd check it out." Her smile faltered for a second, and I could see the panic creeping into her eyes. For a brief moment, I wondered if she was going to admit everything. But then, just as quickly, the mask went back on. "Oh, you know how it is," she said quickly. "Just a casual night out with Jason and some friends. Nothing special." I couldn't take it anymore. "Clara," I said, standing up from the booth, my voice low but firm. "What's really going on here? What are you hiding?" Her eyes flickered to Jason, who was now looking over at us from across the room. Clara's gaze shifted back to me, and for the first time in our relationship, I saw something I had never seen before: guilt. "I don't know what you're talking about," she replied, her voice wavering. "You're overthinking things." I couldn't believe it. The words felt hollow. I had heard her say them 1,000 times before, but now, they felt like lies. I couldn't stand there any longer. "I know what I saw," I said coldly, my heart pounding. "I know what's been going on, and I'm not going to pretend anymore." Before she could respond, I turned and walked out of the bar, leaving everything behind. But as I stepped out into the cold night air, I knew this was just the beginning. The truth had been uncovered, and there was no going back. I didn't go home right away. I couldn't. My mind was racing, my thoughts all tangled up in what I had just witnessed. I found myself driving aimlessly, not really paying attention to where I was going. The city's lights blurred through my windshield as I tried to make sense of it all. What had I just seen? Clara, the woman I thought I knew, sitting there with Jason, looking at him in a way she never looked at me. I pulled over to the side of the road and sat there for a few minutes, just breathing, trying to calm myself down. I needed to think. I needed to understand. But the more I thought about it, the more I felt like the ground was slipping out from under me. The guilt, the silence when she saw me, the way she quickly shifted her story, it was all too much. I couldn't shake the image of them sitting there, too comfortable, too close. Jason had no reason to act that way with Clara unless there was something more to their relationship than she'd been letting on. And if she was hiding this from me, what else had she been hiding? I couldn't wait any longer. I needed answers, and I needed them now. I drove back to the apartment. The place that had once felt like home now felt foreign, like it belonged to someone else. I parked outside, took a deep breath, and walked up the stairs. When I opened the door, Clara wasn't in the living room. I heard the shower running in the bathroom, so I knew she was home. I sat down on the couch, my fingers tapping nervously against the armrest. I could hear her humming through the bathroom door, unaware that I was sitting there, the silence between us growing more unbearable by the second. When she finally emerged, wrapped in a towel, her hair still damp, she looked surprised to see me sitting there. But there was no warmth in her eyes, just that same distant look I had been noticing for weeks. "Vincent, what are you doing here?" she asked, her voice forced, like she wasn't expecting me to be there. I didn't say anything at first. I just looked at her, trying to find the words that would make her face the truth. But I didn't need to say much. The tension in the room spoke louder than anything I could. "I was at the bar tonight, Clara," I said finally, my voice steady but cold. "I saw you with Jason. I saw the way you looked at him. Don't lie to me." Her face went pale. I saw the color drain from her cheeks, and for the first time, I saw her panic. She quickly dropped her towel on the bed and moved toward me, but I wasn't having it. I stood up, cutting her off before she could get any closer. "It's not what you think," she said, her voice faltering. But I could see the cracks in her facade. The lie was already starting to unravel. "Then what is it, Clara?" I asked, my frustration boiling over. "What's going on between you two?" She looked away for a moment, as if gathering the courage to speak. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, the words hanging in the air, heavy with the weight of everything unspoken. Finally, she spoke, but her voice was barely above a whisper. "I didn't want to hurt you, Vincent," she said, her eyes not meeting mine. "Jason and we've been seeing each other for a while now. I never meant for it to go this far, but it just did. I'm so sorry. I never wanted to hurt you, but I've been so unhappy for months. And he's been there for me in ways you haven't." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I wanted to scream, to yell at her for everything, for betraying me, for lying to my face. But instead, I just stood there, frozen, trying to process what she had just confessed. "Months," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "You've been seeing him for months?" Clara nodded, her eyes now filled with tears. But I couldn't feel sorry for her. Not now. Not after everything she had done. "I didn't know how to tell you," she continued. "I was afraid you'd leave me. But I can't keep lying to you anymore." A rush of anger surged through me, but I held it in. There was no point in getting angry now. It wouldn't change anything. The damage had already been done. "So what now?" I asked, my voice cold. "Are we done? Is that what you're trying to say?" Clara shook her head, her voice breaking. "I don't want to lose you, Vincent. I never did. I don't know how to fix this. I don't know if I can." I laughed bitterly, the sound harsh and empty. "You can't fix it, Clara. You've already made your choice. You've already chosen him. And there's nothing you can say to change that." She reached out for me, but I took a step back. I couldn't let her touch me. Not after everything. "I think we need some space," I said, my heart heavy with the weight of her betrayal. "I need time to think, to figure out what I'm supposed to do next." She didn't argue. She just nodded, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. But I could tell she didn't really understand. She was still trying to hold on to something that was already gone. I turned and walked out of the room, not looking back. The door closed behind me with a finality that echoed through the apartment. I didn't know where I was going or what I was going to do next. All I knew was that everything I thought I knew about Clara, about us, was a lie. And now, I was left to pick up the pieces of a shattered life. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Clara and Jason. The way she looked at him, the way her smile was different. It was like a knife twisting in my gut, and no matter how much I tried to distract myself, I couldn't escape it. The next few days were a blur. I went to work, went through the motions, but it felt like I was walking through life in a fog. Every time I saw Clara's face, every time I heard her voice, I couldn't shake the image of her with him. I thought maybe, just maybe, I could get past it. But how could I? I didn't reach out to her after that night. I knew she wanted to talk, wanted to explain things, but I wasn't ready. Not yet. I wasn't even sure I ever would be. A week passed, and I was starting to think about the next steps. The idea of staying in a relationship that felt like a lie was unbearable, but I couldn't just walk away without understanding everything. I had to know why. What had gone wrong? What had I missed? And, most of all, was I just a fool for not seeing the signs? That's when I got the text. It was from Clara. "I need to see you. Please, Vincent. We can talk. I need you to understand." I stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the reply button. Part of me wanted to ignore it, wanted to just move on and forget her. But another part of me, the part that still loved her, wanted to hear her out. Maybe she was telling the truth. Maybe there was more to this than I realized. I agreed to meet her, though I wasn't sure what I was walking into. Was she going to beg for forgiveness? Was she going to explain everything away like she always did? Or was this the end, the final goodbye that we both knew was coming? We agreed to meet at a quiet cafe, somewhere public where emotions could be held in check. I arrived early, needing the time to gather my thoughts. The air outside felt heavy, like the world was holding its breath. When she finally walked in, my heart skipped a beat. She looked the same, but somehow, she didn't. Her eyes were red, and her shoulders slumped, like the weight of everything was crushing her. She walked slowly toward the table, and I couldn't tell if she was still the woman I had married or if she was someone else entirely. She sat down across from me, avoiding eye contact, her fingers trembling around the coffee cup in front of her. The silence between us was thick, suffocating. Finally, she spoke, her voice low and shaky. "I never meant for any of this to happen, Vincent. I'm so sorry." I didn't respond at first. I just looked at her, trying to read her, trying to figure out if this was the real Clara or if it was just another act. "I never wanted to hurt you," she continued, her voice cracking. "Jason and I, it wasn't planned. It wasn't supposed to be like this. I was just lonely, Vincent, and I don't even know how it happened. One thing led to another, and I made a mistake." I felt a wave of anger rise in me, but I kept it in check. I wasn't here to fight, at least not yet. I needed to hear everything. "You were lonely?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "So, you decided to be with him? You couldn't talk to me? You couldn't tell me you were feeling like this?" She looked up at me then, her eyes filled with tears. "I thought I could handle it. I didn't want to burden you with my problems. I thought if I kept it inside, if I just stayed quiet, it would pass. But it didn't, and it got worse. And now I've ruined everything." Her words hit me like a slap. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But the doubt was already creeping in. She had been lying to me for months, sneaking around with him. And for what? For a moment of comfort? Was it that easy for her to just throw everything away? "I don't know if I can believe you, Clara," I said, the words slipping out before I could stop them. "I don't know if I can ever trust you again." She nodded, looking down at her hands. "I understand," she whispered. "I don't expect you to. I've hurt you too much. But I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry. For everything." The weight of her apology hung in the air like a dark cloud. But it didn't feel like enough. Sorry wasn't going to fix what had been broken. "I don't know what comes next," I said quietly, my mind racing. "I don't know if I can forgive you. I don't know if I can even be with you after everything that's happened." Clara's face crumpled, and she finally looked up at me, her eyes pleading. "Please, Vincent, don't leave me like this. I know I've made a terrible mistake, but I still love you. I need you to believe that." But I didn't know what to believe anymore. The woman I had loved for so long, was she really the same person? Could I ever trust her again? Could we ever go back to what we were? The silence between us deepened. Neither of us knew what to say next. And for the first time, I wasn't sure if I ever would. The days after our meeting at the cafe were a blur. Clara called me multiple times, sent me texts, but I couldn't bring myself to respond. I was angry, confused, but more than that, I felt betrayed in a way I couldn't fully explain. Every time I looked at her messages, I felt like I was drowning in all the things left unsaid. But there was one message that changed everything. It came late one night, around midnight. I was lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of the mess my life had become. And then my phone buzzed. The message was from Clara. "I can't do this anymore, Vincent. I know I've hurt you, but I can't live with myself like this. I need to tell you everything. Please, meet me tomorrow. It's the only way we can move forward." I didn't know what to think. Part of me wanted to just delete the message and move on with my life. But something in the way she phrased it, the desperation, the finality, made me pause. I agreed to meet her again. We chose a quiet park, one we used to visit when we first started dating. It felt like a lifetime ago. The trees, the smell of fresh grass, the sound of birds chirping. It all seemed so peaceful, so innocent. It was hard to believe that just a few weeks ago, everything had been different. Everything had been simple. But now, nothing was simple. When I arrived, Clara was already there, sitting on a bench near the fountain. Her face was pale, her eyes red from what I could only assume were sleepless nights. She stood when she saw me, her shoulders slumped as if the weight of the world was on her. "I'm sorry, Vincent," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "I should have told you everything sooner." I didn't say anything. I just stood there, waiting for her to continue. She took a deep breath and began to speak. "I know what I've done isn't forgivable," she said, her voice trembling. "But there's more. I never meant for it to go this far. At first, it was just a connection, something I didn't feel with you anymore. But then it turned into something else, something I couldn't control." She looked away, staring into the distance. I could see her hands shaking as she clasped them together. "Jason didn't just help me feel better, Vincent. He made me feel alive again. And I got lost in that feeling. I thought I could have both him and you. But I was lying to myself. And to you? I've been lying for months." I felt a sickening twist in my stomach. This wasn't just a mistake. This wasn't something that happened by accident. She had chosen this. She had actively made the decision to keep it going. I clenched my fists, trying to hold back the flood of emotions threatening to spill over. "Why didn't you just leave me if you felt that way?" I finally asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Why did you stay? Why did you let me keep believing everything was fine?" Clara shook her head, tears welling up in her eyes. "I didn't want to hurt you, but I was hurting too, and I thought I could fix it. But now I see how much I've destroyed." She stepped closer to me, her face pleading. "Please, Vincent, I love you. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I want to fix this. I'll do anything. Just tell me what you need." Her words hung in the air like a poison, slowly suffocating me. How could she ask me to fix this? How could she ask for anything after everything that had happened? I took a step back, the distance between us growing wider with every word she spoke. "I don't know what I need, Clara," I said, the words sharp and cold. "But it's not you. Not anymore." Her face crumpled, and for a brief second, I saw the woman I once loved. The woman I thought I knew. But then that image faded, replaced by the reality of who she had become. "I don't know how to fix this," she whispered. "I don't know if I can live with myself." "You don't have to live with me," I said, the words leaving my mouth before I could stop them. Clara's eyes widened, and she took a shaky breath. "You're leaving me?" I didn't answer her. I couldn't. The truth was, I wasn't sure what was next. But I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't stay. Not after all of this. The silence between us was unbearable. It felt like the world had stopped moving, leaving just the two of us in this broken moment. I turned and walked away, not looking back. But the weight of her words, her confession, stayed with me long after I left. What had I become? Was I still the same person who had loved her? Or had I changed too, in ways I couldn't even understand yet? I didn't know. But for the first time in a long while, I felt a strange sense of freedom. I didn't go home after that. I couldn't. The thought of walking into the apartment where Clara and I had shared everything, every laugh, every argument, every quiet moment, seemed unbearable. Instead, I drove, aimlessly at first, just trying to clear my head. But the more I drove, the more I realized there was no escaping it. No matter how far I went, the reality of what had happened would follow me. Clara's words, her confession, were etched in my mind. I could still see her face, that desperate look in her eyes as she begged for my forgiveness. The problem was, I didn't know if I could forgive her. I didn't know if I could ever look at her the same way again. The woman I had trusted, loved, built my life around, had betrayed me in a way I couldn't even fathom. I parked the car near a small lake, one I used to visit when I needed to think. It was quiet there, peaceful, but even the calm water couldn't settle the storm inside me. I sat on the hood of my car, staring out at the stillness, trying to make sense of it all. My phone buzzed, pulling me out of my thoughts. It was Clara again. "I understand if you don't want to talk to me anymore. But please, don't shut me out completely. I'll be here when you're ready." I read the message over and over. She was giving me space, but she was also asking me to make a choice. A choice I wasn't sure I was ready to make. As the hours passed, I realized something. I couldn't keep living in this limbo. I couldn't keep pretending that everything would magically fall into place. I had to decide what came next. I had to make a decision for myself. When I finally returned home, the apartment felt cold. The silence between Clara and me was deafening. She was sitting on the couch, her head down, her hands folded in her lap. "I don't know what you want me to say anymore," she said quietly, not looking up. I stood in the doorway, watching her. I couldn't bring myself to sit next to her. I couldn't pretend like everything was fine, like we were going to be okay. "I've thought about this a lot," I said, my voice steady but heavy. "And I can't do this anymore. I can't keep living with this doubt, this betrayal." Clara's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't say anything. She just nodded slowly, as if she already knew what was coming. "I think it's time for both of us to move on," I continued, the words feeling final, even though part of me didn't want them to be. "We can't fix this. Not now. Maybe not ever." She looked at me for the first time in what felt like forever. Her expression was a mix of pain and understanding, but there was no pleading in her eyes anymore. "I understand," she whispered. And just like that, it was over. I turned and walked out of the apartment, not looking back. I wasn't sure where I was going, but I knew I couldn't stay there anymore. The life I had known, the life I had built with Clara, was gone. And maybe, just maybe, that was for the best. The first few days after leaving were strange, almost like living in someone else's life. I rented a small apartment, not far from the one Clara and I had shared. It was quieter, emptier, but at least it gave me space to think. If I could think clearly at all. My mind kept circling back to Clara, the life we built, and the way everything had fallen apart so suddenly. I couldn't stop replaying the moments in my head. The times I should have seen the signs, the small cracks I ignored, and most of all, the way she had betrayed me. It wasn't just the affair, though. It was the lies, the secrecy, the fact that she had been living a double life. I couldn't stop wondering if I had ever really known her. Or had I been living in a dream, too blind to see the truth? The hardest part was the silence. I didn't hear from Clara for a while, and honestly, I didn't know if I wanted to. I had told her that we needed space, but deep down, I knew we needed more than that. We needed to face what had happened, to confront the lies head on. But I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready to look her in the eye again and pretend that everything could go back to how it was. A week passed before she called. It was late, around 11 p.m., and I hadn't been expecting it. I hesitated before answering, unsure of what she wanted, what she could possibly say after everything. "Vincent," her voice cracked when she spoke. It sounded fragile, like she had been crying. "I've been thinking a lot. I know I don't deserve anything from you, but I need to apologize properly. Not just with words, but with actions. I want to show you that I can change, that I can fix this." I stayed quiet, letting the words sink in. "Clara," I finally said, my voice barely a whisper. "I don't know if I can forgive you. I don't know if I can ever trust you again." "I understand," she replied, her voice soft. "But I need you to know that I'm not asking for your forgiveness right away. I just need you to see that I'm trying. I'm trying to be a better person, Vincent. For me. For us." Her words hung in the air. I could hear the sincerity in her voice, but something inside me was still numb. "I don't know if that's enough," I said slowly. "I don't know if anything can be enough after what you did." There was a long pause. "I know," she whispered, "but I had to tell you. I couldn't live with myself if I didn't." After that, we didn't speak much. She texted occasionally, but I couldn't bring myself to respond. It wasn't anger that stopped me anymore. It was a kind of emptiness, a hollow space inside me where all the love and trust had once lived. I couldn't fill it with words. Not yet. I spent my days working, trying to distract myself. But the nights were the hardest. The silence was deafening. I missed her, but I hated myself for missing someone who had hurt me so deeply. I missed the life we had, even if it was a lie. But with every day that passed, the pain began to dull, little by little. I started to focus on myself, something I hadn't done in years. I began to rediscover the parts of me I had lost in the chaos of our relationship. It was strange, but also freeing. It was the first time in months I didn't feel like I was drowning. Then, one afternoon, I got a message from an unknown number. At first, I thought it was Clara again. But when I opened it, my heart dropped. It was from Jason. "Vincent, I know this is the last thing you want, but I need to be honest with you. Clara and I, it wasn't just a fling. It's been serious. I don't know what your plans are, but I wanted to make sure you heard it from me first. She's been seeing me for a while, and I don't want you to find out from anyone else." I stood there, staring at the message, the weight of his words sinking in. This wasn't just a momentary lapse in judgment. This wasn't just a one-time thing. Clara had been involved with him for months, and worse, he had known. The reality hit me like a punch to the gut. It was one thing for Clara to lie, but for Jason to come to me like this? It felt like another betrayal, a slap in the face. I didn't respond to his message. Instead, I sat down on the couch, feeling the familiar numbness return. This wasn't over. It hadn't been over from the moment I found out. But the question now was, where did I go from here? I wasn't sure. But one thing was certain, I couldn't keep living in the past. I couldn't let the shadow of Clara's lies follow me forever. It was time for me to move on. The days after Jason's message were difficult, but they also marked a turning point. I could have let the anger and the betrayal consume me. I could have stayed angry at Clara, angry at Jason, angry at myself. But somewhere deep down, I knew that holding on to that bitterness wouldn't bring me peace. It wouldn't bring me anything good. I spent the next few weeks trying to focus on my own healing. It wasn't easy. There were nights when the pain of everything still felt fresh, when I thought about Clara and the life we shared, and it hurt more than I wanted to admit. But gradually, the days started to feel a little lighter. I threw myself into work, into activities that brought me joy, and slowly, I began rediscovering who I was without Clara by my side. One day, a friend invited me out for a weekend trip, something simple to get away from the city. I was hesitant at first, but I knew it was time. I needed to take a step forward, away from the past. The trip was a breath of fresh air. The landscape was beautiful, and it was amazing to be around people who reminded me that life could still be full of laughter and connection. By the time I returned, something inside me had shifted. I felt stronger, more whole. The relationship with Clara was a chapter in my life that had closed, and though it still held memories, both good and bad, it was no longer my story. A month later, I ran into Clara at a cafe. She was sitting alone, staring out the window, looking more at peace than I had seen her in months. When she noticed me, she looked hesitant, unsure of what to say, but there was a calmness in her eyes. She stood up as I approached, and for a brief moment, I thought about all the words we could exchange, the emotions that had never been fully dealt with. But instead of anger or blame, I smiled. It wasn't forced. It wasn't for her, it was for me. "Hi, Clara," I said, my voice steady. "How are you?" She seemed surprised by my calmness. I'm doing better, Vincent. I've been trying to take care of myself, and I've learned a lot about what I need." I nodded, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. "I'm glad to hear that," I replied. "I've been doing the same. It's been a journey, but I'm starting to find my peace." We both stood there in silence for a moment, the awkwardness fading. It was clear we would never go back to what we once were, but that was okay. I had forgiven her, not because she deserved it, but because I deserved to let go of the past. "I hope you're happy, Vincent," Clara said, her voice soft but sincere. "I'm getting there," I replied, feeling a sense of closure I didn't know I needed. "And I hope you are too." We exchanged a brief smile, and I could see that, for the first time in a long while, we were both in a place of acceptance. The past no longer had a hold on us. Walking away from that encounter, I felt lighter, as if the final pieces of the puzzle were falling into place. There was no more resentment, no more regret, just a sense of growth, of moving forward, and of reclaiming my own happiness. And as I continued down the path ahead, I knew that this was only the beginning. The future was full of possibilities, and I was ready to embrace it with open arms.